Welcome to Relative Insights. Our mission is for all people to access transformational and educational resources in the field of mental health and emotional wellness. Doris and Jennifer discuss current issues and approaches to living a life of hope and fulfillment. This podcast is not a replacement for therapy. The conversations, guests, tips discussed are provided as educational, thought-provoking, and inspiring. Our opinions are not specific therapeutic advice. Views expressed are our own personal perspectives and experiences. Information heard here is to be used at your caution and discretion. As always, please seek out individual mental health care to best serve you. Welcome. It's so good to see you, Dee.
Hi. Hi, Jen. So today we're going to be talking about something that a lot of us have, unfortunately, some experience with. And I wanted to bring in like some personal experiences, but also talk as professionals. And the topic today is infidelity. Mostly talking about post-infidelity stress disorder, which a lot of people do not know about, don't understand, so we're going to be touching on that a bit today. But, as far as like mental health professionals, you and I both have experience with, helping clients or friends through infidelity. I have some personal experience with it. And I know I asked you about personal experience, but you were saying, what were you saying about, like, what's your experience?
As you were saying, until we started this podcast, I had no idea about post-infidelity stress disorder. And while I don't have any personal experience with infidelity, it is a huge and complex subject. And it seems a lot more widespread than what I've been led to believe, because although I don't have personal experience, it is a topic that has come up with many of my friends and peers. And there's this this development of addressing this issue in relationships. And how do people make sense of their feelings and actions, and how does that, take shape in relationships? So, and I'm curious, as far as infidelity, is there a structure? Are you looking only in marriage relationships or in all like committed, anything that's committed?
So here's the thing, right? That actually, I'm glad you said that, because that's the direction I was going to take next, because like, so many of us, like, it's subjective, right? Like, what does infidelity mean to us, especially, oh my goodness, in this age of social media, which we'll get to that in a second. But so when I talk about infidelity, obviously a lot of people use the term cheating. I'm using the term infidelity for the, I guess the duration of this podcast. Cheating, infidelity will be synonymous. And I'm speaking on any type of action or state of being unfaithful in a relationship. So that could be a marital relationship or, a committed sexual relationship. So you don't have to be married to have experienced infidelity. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I like the term unfaithful, because that sounds like a very true to form definition.
I mean, that's actually the actual definition in the Oxford Dictionary is that it says the action or state of being unfaithful to a spouse or other sexual partner.
Yeah.
And the thing is, so like, and that could, again, very subjective, right? Could
It is
mean
based
so
on,
many things.
yeah, because there's miscommunication between couples and partners where you're on two separate pages, but I don't know how specific you want to be, where it's just in the context of, hey, both parties both acknowledge that they were going to be in an exclusive relationship, whether it was, dating exclusively or, common law, living together for an extended period of time, or, taking marriage vows.
So for the purpose of this podcast, I'm only speaking of being in a committed relationship, because obviously in, our day and age, there's a lot, you define your relationship, right? So you have, which I was actually going to get into next too, is that like the whole term of like being unfaithful. You have to decide in your relationship and know from the jump, like, once you two decide, okay, we're in a committed relationship, then what does that look like? What does that mean for us? Does that mean you are not getting on, social media and sliding into DMs? Does that mean that you're not scrolling Instagram, checking out chicks, and commenting on stories? Like, does this mean that you are not having sex, and that means oral sex, and or intercourse with someone outside of our relationship, kissing someone outside, flirting, like it's the whole gambit. Like, you have to decide in your relationship what that means for you. Like, do you consider your partner being unfaithful if they text an ex and, have conversation back and forth, if they're flirting with someone that, I don't know, they're attracted to or whatever? So you have to have that basically understood and defined in your relationship, right? That's a given.
And things come up as the longer you're in a relationship. And another thing is emotional intimacy. Like, I've read about some people having a non-sexual relationship with someone of, same sex, opposite sex. But all of a sudden they're more intimate with their emotions than they are with their committed partner. What do you think of that? Does that count? Some people, I don't know, some people do, but
like an emotional affair.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's another thing. So again, it's the dynamics of your relationship, because I had a couple come in, and he was like very adamant that I can't trust her anymore. She cheated on me. She had an emotional affair with someone, and to me, like, that's the equivalent of cheating on me. And he explained what that meant to him. Like, it was she and the guy, like, obviously at the end of the day, what they did was they crossed boundaries. It was inappropriate for anybody in any type of committed relationship, but they exchanged like text messages back and forth, like saying like, oh, like, I'm tired today, man. Like, I could really use a massage and a BJ. And would, respond like, well, I don't know about the massage, but I could probably help with the latter. And so, her, intimate partner reading these text messages, even though she's saying, oh, but there was just jokes. Like, we never actually did anything. And that was like the climate of the office. And, and obviously she were to put herself in his shoes. Obviously she would not want him texting someone at his job. I mean, also, this is a work environment. Like, what kind of work environment is it that you guys are talking about BJs and this? Like, it's just inappropriate all the way around. But my thing was this. What I wanted her to understand is it's about how your partner feels. If your partner feels that you were unfaithful, then you have to meet your partner where they are and work, work on it from that point forward, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So apologizing for your inappropriate behavior, even if in your mind you're thinking, I did not cheat because I didn't have sex with this person.
Yeah. I think what I appreciate what you're saying is, and I think this is something to highlight to the listeners, everybody's relationship is unique. While there might be similar characteristics, we have unique relationships with unique expectations. And so there's not a one size fits all, but really it's about communicating with your partner, because you and your partner can have an idea of what faithful relationship is, and your parents will be like, what?
Exactly.
So
you have to communicate what your values are, your beliefs are, and you two have to figure out what are the dynamics of our relationship right off the bat. It's totally fine. Like, I have so many clients who are like, well, it's too early to talk about that stuff, and what if I run them off? And no, because you don't want to be going a year from now and you're checking his phone every time you turn around because he's messaging females, or you're checking her. I don't want to make this all about like as if only guys do it, but you're checking her phone because
Dude, I can tell you the other side.
Yes. Yeah, it's both sides. It's definitely both sides.
And just reading, because I wasn't familiar with PISD, historically, it's always been considered that males are unfaithful. And the statistics show that now, I mean, well, one study in 2012 was like 20 to 40% of males have been unfaithful in a relationship, and about 15 to 25% of females. But some of the studies and papers that come out say that it's just as likely for a female to be unfaithful as
of course
a man.
It is.
So,
again, especially in this age of access, like we have so much access to way too much, people, especially female, like, not saying that a female is more likely to cheat because she has so many men sliding into her DMs, but she has a lot more access,
why? Because females are social, a little bit more.
No, I'm saying because men are more outward with their desires of a female on, let's say, Instagram. Every time a female turns around, she's opening up her messages and it's another guy in there saying, I think you're hot, I think you're sexy, blah blah blah, whatever. She has the choice whether or not she blocks it or deletes it or whatever, but it's about the access. It's just you have access to a lot more people,
and anonymity too, because it's a lot more intimidating to go up to a woman face to face versus being far away on a keyboard typing away. There's less risk of either getting beat up by another male or rejection. So,
yeah. And the thing is, okay, so like in our society now, you have polyamory, you have open marriages. And so I'm not speaking in terms of like someone having sex with multiple partners while you're in a relationship, because again, we're talking about what you have decided for your relationship. If you are in a committed monogamous relationship, I will say again, if you're in a committed monogamous relationship, that is what we're talking about here, stepping outside of that relationship.
And I think the key undercurrent, based on friends that I have talked to and experiences that I've shared, is communication. That there have been times, and I know people personally who were in a committed monogamous relationship and then went through these things, and all of a sudden they were reevaluating the nature of their relationship. Instead of going behind someone's back, they talked to their spouse and said, hey, this is what I'm going through, and was very communicative, overly communicative for, the spouses, from the spouse's perspective or partner's perspective, where they're like, okay, we're going to talk about this and deal with this. destabilizing, and it was hard, and there were tears, but that's a lot more constructive than keeping it all bottled up. And then, that's another thing about this. There's an attraction in infidelity too, because it's a secret. There's this hidden thing that is only shared between two people, and that adds to this sense of excitement. So communication.
Do you mean the excitement of like stepping outside of the relationship?
Yeah. I don't know if I don't know if you're familiar with Esther Perel, and I might not be saying her
familiar.
name. She does a lot of work with infidelity. I think she's based in the US, but European. But she talks about what draws people into infidelity and the couples that she counsels. And also, helping to evaluate
like
whether they can repair.
Or something?
She has. She's prolific. She's prolific.
Yeah, I have some clients that listen to her, and yeah.
What do you think? I can't wait to hear, because I haven't heard.
I have no opinion. I'm Switzerland. Like I told you before, like wherever anybody can get help, wherever they feel like, okay, that really resonates with me, great. I'm all for it. Like, and again, just like with us, everybody has their own, like, we're talking about our own opinions, right? Our personal opinions, our professional opinions, but there's a lot of people out there in the field that has, they have their own opinions.
And yours is different. I want to hear your opinion now. Because I haven't read all of her books. I've seen highlights and stuff and listened to TED Talk. Let's hear your perspective.
No, I told you I have none whatsoever.
You don't have a perspective? I don't believe that.
On her? No, I have none.
Oh, no, not on her. I want to hear your perspective about infidelity. And your experience.
Okay, so here's what I really, really want to talk about today, because I really feel like there are so many of us, whether you're in a relationship and it's been 3 months, 6 months, a year, whether you're married, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, when you have this idea, this belief that you are in this relationship with someone, you are committed, and they step outside of the relationship, and for lack of a better term, they hurt you. There are various, emotions, like there's a lot of emotional trauma, and there's some like physical things that happen within us when something like that happens. And I feel like, because it is, and I don't want to say everybody's cheating on everybody, because I don't know that, but it's becoming way more common than I wish that it were. But I have more times than not, I come up across people that have dealt with, infidelity. They say, yeah, I've been cheated on, right? But what they don't understand is what they went through afterwards. And that's the thing I wanted to, that's what I wanted to talk to you about today, because so many people, whether they decide to stay in the relationship or they decide to go, I don't think that they realize number one, it is a trauma. I tell every single client that comes in, like when we go through our trauma history, I ask them, have you ever been cheated on? And I also ask them, have they ever cheated? Because, and I'll get to that later, but like, that is another, like, because there's a difference between a serial cheater and someone who steps outside of their relationship, and it's like, it's almost like you go through your own trauma in a sense of like, you lose your identity. Like, you are just like, I don't know who I am anymore. Like, I've had this client who, he cheated on his girlfriend. I think they were together for about 2 years, like high school sweethearts. And he, did oral sex with a female that he was like, I guess, taken home from a party. They were drinking, whatever, and his girlfriend decided to stay with him. Like, he cheated. He immediately went home, called his girlfriend, told her what happened. Was very, apologetic. Was very, beside himself, because he was just like, I can't believe I did that. Like, and he didn't want to blame alcohol, even though he was, obviously he had been drinking. And
it was a factor, but not.
It was a factor. It was a factor, because obviously your inhibitions are lowered, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, he wanted to take complete and utter, responsibility for his actions. And so he went through his own type of like trauma that he had to heal from, even being the one who stepped outside of the relationship. So, again, like, it's both sides. There's a type of trauma that goes on, especially like trying to come back from that. Like, you have so much, like, you not only are you dealing with like trying to figure out who you are anymore, because you're like, that's not me. I know for him in particular, he said that, like, I think 6 months prior, he'd ended a friendship. He'd walked away from a friend because that friend cheated. And he said, how could you do that? Like, you are disgusting. You're a monster. Like, how could you do that to your girl? And he was like, I can't be friends with anybody that would do that. Like, he was like, I made a huge deal about this, lost that friendship. 6 months later, I cheat on my girlfriend. And I'm sitting here thinking, who am I? Am I a monster? Am I this disgusting? Like, I'm just disgusted with myself. Like, I don't, like, he went through a deep depression because he was like, I don't know who I am anymore. So again, like, both sides, right? But going back to my point, I kind of lost my point.
But that's a really good point to bring up, which it sounded like your point was that it is trauma to both parties, and people don't realize what it does to your identity or your body or sense of reality.
Exactly. And it's like, again, I feel like for some people, you hold it inside. You're like, you're going through all these emotions, you're having all these thoughts, and you push it down because, on one hand, you don't want to hear what your friends have to say, especially if you decide to stay in the relationship. You're questioning yourself, like, your self-esteem takes a hit. Like, it affects you on so many different levels, but you don't realize that, what's going on is truly, I'm going through a trauma, now. So, like, the term, the PISD, they term it as if they say post infidelity stress disorder instead of, post infidelity trauma, right? But it still is a trauma, and they label it that way because they have likened it to PTSD. They've said that you have, what were you
they saying that it's like parallel symptoms?
Yes. They, like, it's not as well known, obviously, as PTSD, because people are still doing research on it, but they've shown that, like, there are a lot of parallel symptoms that you go through, the same as you do with PTSD. And, like, enough therapists were seeing this in sessions, they were like, this sounds a lot like PTSD, and this sounds like, wow, I was seeing it just across the board. So people started writing on it and saying, we need to bring some light to this, because I cannot tell you how many clients I've had, and I myself felt this way too, that you don't know how to describe it other than, I feel like I'm going crazy. And you don't know why. Like,
that leads me to a question. And this is sticky. With your clients, because I have had a couple of friends who I've talked to who have felt that way and have been cheated on. But there are also issues with one of them struggles from chronic PTSD or complex PTSD, and another friend had struggles with addiction. And both of them had issues with infidelity where they had been cheated on or they sensed something was off. And that's kind of what I saw with PISD, where there's almost this feeling in your body that something is off and you can't explain it. And then you start launching into like, you feel like you're going crazy and you're launching into these thoughts that are almost obsessive, and you're like, and you can't pinpoint it, but you're trying to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah.
My question is, do you find that the post-infidelity stress disorder coincides with people who have had come from trauma backgrounds or rich trauma backgrounds, or is it anyone's?
I mean, not necessarily. I do think that the infidelity adds to and sometimes takes people from like trauma to complex trauma, complex PTSD, because it's, you know, it's compounded. It's like trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma. But a lot of people that, you know, that I've come across have experienced PISD without ever having experienced any other trauma in their life. And that's why sometimes it's confusing to them, because they're like, why am I feeling this way? Like they'll have flashbacks. They'll have one thing that's, you know, that I've seen across the board is that rage. You're so angry all the time, and that's typically not your demeanor. Like I you know, I never get angry. Like, why am I so angry? I'm just so angry all the time. Like, because like it produces that trauma, produces that inside of you, because, you know, obviously you've been betrayed, you know, you've been hurt, and it's something that you didn't expect. And I'm sorry, but like infidelity to me is like a type of hurt that, even though we have all these symptoms that we list out in PISD, I truly still feel like it is something that is indescribable until you experience it yourself. Kind of similar to like depression. Like I feel like you can tell people and, you know, say, but it's like when you experience it yourself, it's a whole other ball game, you know? And so, yeah, like I feel that way about infidelity. It's like, it's a type of deep hurt. Like, oh gosh.
It sounds like you can feel it and you can know something intellectually, but experiencing it, it feels like it cuts down to the marrow of your bones.
Yes.
Like it just
That's
coming
a
out of your
great way of
pores.
putting it. It cuts so deep. It cuts so deep. And you have so many people, men and women, you know, that get rageful, get angry, you know, you get cars keyed up and windows busted out and, you know, yelling and screaming. And people are just looking at them like, oh God, why are you losing your mind over this person? And what's wrong with you? And like, why are you so quote unquote crazy? That's not the case. Like, you are literally dealing with a traumatic event. Like something has taken over you and hurt you so deeply emotionally that you don't, like, your body and your mind don't know what to do with those feelings.
Yeah.
And so more times than not, it comes across as anger and rage, because that's just, as a society as a whole, like that's one of the emotions that is supposedly okay to feel, you know?
And I'm wondering, with infidelity, it seems like there might be a feeling of powerlessness. And
Oh,
so anger and rage is a way of regaining power and like acting out on your environment to gain some sense of agency versus
yes,
crying and, you know,
yes.
weeping and grieving. So
You feel powerless. You feel lost. You feel just, I mean, if I just pulled out like the 100 feeling words in a workbook or the feelings wheel, like there would be way too many emotions to list, of which like you go through when you experience that. It's, again, like we're just saying it's traumatic. Like we're using one word to sum it up because it's heart-wrenching. But so as far as like PISD goes, right? So we have like I think there is actually a book out there, and I think it's the only one that I've come across. But the only thing that I've heard about the book, I'm gonna look it up real quick, is that the way it's written, I think that some people have a problem with it because there's like maybe some religious tones or
Is this
something
the
like that.
Dennis Ortman book? Oh, it's Christian literature. Genre
Yeah,
self-help
it's
book.
the Ortman book. Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
only one um that I found, which honestly made me like start to think I really want to write something. I don't know where to start, how to start, but I feel like there needs to be something out there that appeals to everyone, not just
Yeah.
no, from a religious standpoint, but just across the board, that anyone could pick up and read and say this is helpful for me, instead of putting it down saying, oh well, I don't want to talk about prayer or
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think you can, especially coming at it because it seems like jumping into treatment that a lot of it is treated with psychotherapy or cognitive behavioral therapy. And
Yeah, because you kind of look at it, like I said, like it's parallel to PTSD. So
yeah,
you're looking at using CBT or cognitive behavior therapy to help. Also, like DBT helps, dialectical
exposure.
behavior therapy. Sorry, so I keep
No
using.
worries. I I recognize those, but yeah, the audience might not.
Yeah, but there are some articles out there. Even if you just Google post infidelity stress disorder, it's not, I feel like it's not enough out there, but there are some things out there. I think Psychology Today has an article out there called like Love is War.
Oh,
It
I
kind
was
of breaks down,
yeah.
and I think there's one other one that just talks about post infidelity stress disorder, the causes, the symptoms, and the treatment. Um,
Hey, I found an article preparing for this podcast, which I thought you would like because the title is Some Pro Tips to Surviving Infidelity When Your Partner's Been Unfaithful. I'm all about survival.
love it. I love that you bring the pro tips in.
Let's warrior up, man. Let's warrior up. Put on the shield. It's not from Psych Today, but I saw that one as well.
But it is like, it is something that you kind of have to survive, to be honest with you. Like, I use the term heal. Like I tell my
yeah,
clients, this is something that is going to take time. You need to allow yourself time to heal. You need to allow yourself, that space to be angry, but handle that anger like, you know, don't act out in ways in which you're going to look back and you're not going to be, happy or okay with your behavior, but express your anger. Scream into a pillow, hit a pillow, like, write, but allow yourself to feel those feelings. Allow yourself to feel the sadness, allow yourself to feel the some people feel guilt, some people feel shame. Just allow yourself to feel the time and the space to feel those feelings. Don't just push them down. Don't just, watch a movie and try to
it
distract
dissociates.
yourself from it. Yeah, allow yourself to feel your feelings. But yeah, I mean, we take the same course, obviously, like we do with PTSD and other trauma, and that the first step obviously is that
Establish
exposure
safety.
therapy. Well, the exposure therapy piece of like talking about it.
Yeah.
Talk about
Did
it.
I thought I saw in Psych Today that recovery means finding a safe place just to be able to talk about it. Because
Oh my gosh.
sometimes there's not even safety. You're trying to talk about it and people are minimizing it or
Oh goodness, yeah.
gaslighting you or who
Everybody
knows what.
cheats. Why are you tripping about this, girl? Just go find another man. Or what's wrong with you? Like,
Yeah.
girl, you're too good to be. Well, again, you're minimizing your friend's pain without even realizing it. No, allow your friend that safe space to vent, to talk about it. Like, you don't want her or him to like just sit there and wallow in it, but you do want to give them a safe space for them to talk about it, to talk about their feelings, what they're thinking, because if not, again, they're just going to push it down. They're going to feel like, you know, they're going to question themselves like, well, am I being, unreasonable? Am I like making a bigger deal out of this than it really is. You don't ever want that to happen. Everybody deserves to feel how they're feeling, period. You're sad. You have a reason to be sad. We need to validate that. I feel like you're about to say something.
I love everything that you're saying. Especially this about how we talk to each other as friends, because so many times we can come in as friends when our friend is feeling down and we're uncomfortable with that. And so we try to fix it and make them feel better, rather than checking in with yourself and being like, instead of trying to fix it or trying to distract, you can say, and this is true, I feel bad that this is happening to you, and it hurts my heart, and it makes me feel uncomfortable that this is happening to you, so much so that I want you to feel better. And even just acknowledging that is enough, versus trying to come in with, here are some steps to fix it, or blah, blah, blah. We can turn this around right now. And if friends could do that for one another, there'd be, you guys would put therapists out of a job, therapists and coaches, because
goodness.
People really
maybe we shouldn't. Jennifer, stop telling me.
Give it away. Give it away. This is your mission. This is your mission.
I'm kidding. But
I also have a question for you, Dee. That's another thing. Surviving is one thing, but healing is repairing what's broken and being whole. And also I want to know, do you have a sense of how much time does it take to heal from this? Because when I was reading one of the articles, and I think it was Psych Today, but I might be wrong. It's like, PISD is parallel, but it's short term. It lasts weeks to a few months. And I wanted to know, was that your experience from clients? How long does it take?
I find that so I chuckle a little bit, only because, like, can I tell you how many of my clients are like, so how long is it going to take for you to fix me? Like, first of all, I'm not fixing you. We're on a journey. We're on a journey together.
I'm a companion. I'm a companion walking alongside you.
I'm here alongside you.
You are gravely mistaken.
How long are we going to be on this journey together till I feel better and I don't want to strangle him anymore? And I just laugh. And I'm like, and I say this, like, there's no time gate, right? I've had some clients who, because obviously it depends on the person, right? It depends on where you are in your own mental health. It depends on where you are with your own self-worth, your self-esteem. Like, if you're coming from a place where you have a very strong foundation, you have high self-esteem, high self-worth, you are, very self-aware, you have tremendous amount of self-respect, boundaries, all of that, right? Then the chances of you coming back from, dealing with this type of trauma are, probably going to be much quicker than someone who is coming from a multitude of traumas, low self-esteem, low self-worth. Yeah, it just depends on where you are. And that's what I tell them, it depends on where you are. And it could take weeks, it could take months. But the bottom line is, when you get there, you're going to be a healthier person than where you started from, right?
That sounds encouraging. What are you laughing about? No, that makes sense. That depending on what protective factors you have are
where you are when you start this whole thing, this whole journey. Like, if you're already starting on really shaky ground, really shaky foundation, it may take you longer because you're having to go back and, establish boundaries and, build up your self-esteem and your self-worth, and it may take quite a bit longer. And then also, like, some people don't have, really good self-awareness. So they're not very in tune with their emotions, their feelings. So it may take them a while to even try to learn to recognize how they're feeling in the moment, to be able to even sit in it and process it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So they may be feeling
Absolutely.
sad or hurt, but they don't really understand that feeling, or they're not able to fully express it. And so, again, it's almost like starting over, having
I
to learn all that. And then,
I don't think I knew anything about self-awareness until probably about 4 years ago.
mm-hmm,
Like, literally sitting with feelings, like you said, and sitting with discomfort, sitting with betrayal, guilt,
mm-hmm,
shame, sadness, without, trying to drink it away, eat it away, Netflix it away,
mm-hmm.
So
So one of
what's
the
the next
biggest,
step? Yeah.
so one of the biggest things they say, like, with infidelity, is just the fact of the, that one person that you felt like was there to love you, to protect you, to, that you sometimes trusted the most, when they step outside of the relationship and they betray you, it just leads to a lot of, like, overwhelming emotions and reactions. And so some of those reactions can be like insomnia. Like, a lot of people don't even realize, like, they may develop insomnia. They can't sleep. They, what I talked about earlier, experience rage. Some people experience, like, emotional numbing, where they're just like, I don't know how I feel. Like, I just feel nothing. Like, I'm just going about my day. Despair, avoidance. Like, some people just, like, pretend like nothing even happened. They just keep moving on. Um, Also, like, one thing I was telling one client is, like, you can experience flashbacks whether or not you actually saw the affair take place. Because I'm obviously, I have some people that have experienced flashbacks that have actually walked in and caught, their partner. But I've also had some experience flashbacks because they knew what the person looked like, because they, like, researched them and saw them. So then they would imagine in their head, them having sex or whatever have you. And in a way, that's like their form of having a flashback. So again, very parallel symptoms of PTSD right there along with PISD.
And just to add something to that, that also happens with, just to add a complicated factor, the person that is the how would I say it nicely, the outside party who the person is cheating with. I have talked with people who have knowingly entered into affairs or gotten into infidelity with someone who was married, and they knew that. And that is also, from that person's perspective, it's a disservice to that person as well, if they're hoping for a relationship where they are obsessing and looking on social media and following the person that they're sleeping with, and going into flashbacks of, oh, they're so happy with their spouse or partner. I thought they were going to leave them and they're not. And I have heard as well, that they get into a sense of obsession and making up stories about they're so happy. And I thought that, I thought we had something special, and like going in and almost sadistically punishing themselves, creeping on wives' social media, creeping on the, cheating partner's social media as well. And overall, it's just it's sad. It's a destructive process for all parties. And it causes a huge break with people who are in the committed relationship. But just what you were saying reminded me of a client I had who was the outside party.
I am so glad you brought that up because, I was talking about trauma that the cheater may experience, trauma that the person who was cheated on may experience. But, what about the third party, the person that was brought into it? Like, because some cases, like, they don't know. And when they do find out, it is very traumatic for them because, again, they sometimes go through the same process of the person that was cheated on, that was in the committed relationship, because they were looking at this like it was a relationship for them too.
Yeah. And there's a seduction almost, and it's not always the case, but there's a seduction of like, oh, I found someone finally, and they're unhappy with their relationship, and it's just my bad luck. And there's a series of justifications or rationalizations to even knowingly enter into it, let alone how many people go around without wearing, or not being honest and hitting the bars. And it's but that was a side piece. I didn't want to
side piece. Really, Jennifer?
I didn't
really? That was like, oh, yeah. See there.
I know, me too.
You act like you wasn't doing shade. I'm only kidding.
Continue.
So I do want to say, like, just to throw this out there. So, like, if you have ever experienced infidelity, some of the things you may experience are repeated intrusive thoughts. And that could be, like I said, like the flashbacks of, like, again, not even actually seeing it, but just imagining it. Intrusive thoughts of, like, oh gosh, like, was I not good enough? Was I not enough? Like, how many times have they done? Like, just a lot of intrusive thoughts. Unstable emotional regulation. Again, that could look like wanting to key their car, wanting to bust out their windows, just that deep-seated anger.
Slashing tires.
Stabbing them tires.
Stabbing tires, or if you want to get away with it, you can just put a slight pin and have it be a low leak so that it doesn't happen right away. Not that I'm giving tips.
That desire to, like, drop your toothbrush in the toilet after you poop. Like,
we are not encouraging any of this behavior.
Oh, wait, are we not sharing personal story? Oh, I know.
Coming up with examples, please. This is not an endorsement for any of those behaviors.
Also, like, out of body experiences. So a lot of people who experience trauma, which, again, infidelity is a trauma. I'm just going to keep saying infidelity is a trauma. A lot of people who experience traumas have, like, out of body experiences. And I say this because, if you're in therapy, you may hear the term disassociation. That's what we call disassociation in the therapy world, but you may describe it as an out of body experience. And it's just when, like, you're sitting there and you just don't feel present. Like, you just feel outside of yourself. Like, the world is going on. Let's say your friends talking to you and they're like, did you see that movie? It was so good. And you're just sitting there and they're like, are you listening? Are you there? And you're not really fully there. I'm not saying, like, you're outside of your body and you're staring at yourself while you're drinking. Like, no, just that feeling of just not fully being there, like disassociating from what's going on around you, like the opposite of being mindful, being present. Also the feeling of like alternating between like feeling numb or just wanting to like strike out against them in retaliation. You go back and forth between those two feelings quite often. The inability to like stop scanning for any new data that might cause any more distress. And what that looks like is, grabbing their phone, going through it, going through their emails, also asking them. Like, you just have this compelling desire to just keep saying, well, I mean, like, were they better than me? Like, how was it? Like, did you orgasm? Did you know what I mean? Like, guys and girls, like, you're just like, were they bigger than me? Like, it's questions you don't really want to know the answer to, but you just feel compelled to just get all of these answers. Like, what were you doing before? What did they say? What did they smell like? Like, it's just because your brain is like cycling through all of these things. A feeling of like just being, and you touched on this earlier, Jen, but a feeling of being like overwhelmingly powerless and broken. That feeling, I think I will say that's probably the closest to what I was describing earlier of like this feeling that unless you experience it yourself, you just don't know how like deep that hurt goes, like just how it feels. I think that's a good way of putting it, of like you just feel broken, you feel powerless, you feel like this deep hole inside of you, this need to regain self-worth by assigning blame. You have some people that will put the blame on their partner, some people who will put the blame on the person that stepped into the relationship, or you see them putting the blame on like, oh, we just didn't have sex enough, or oh, it's because the society, makes it okay for you guys to cheat, or oh, it's just because like all the access, or you just need to find some reason why it happened and to blame so that you can figure out like at the end of the day, it's really you just trying to figure out why it happened, because either you don't want it to happen with that partner again, or if you choose to leave that partner, you're like, I don't want this to ever happen to me again. So how do I avoid this in the future? So if I can figure out why it happened, why they did what they did, then this will never happen to me. Because again, that type of hurt is a hurt that you never want to feel again. And one of the last things is like a confusion and disorientation, where you're just like, a lot of people were just baffled. Like, how could this happen? Like, we were good. Everything was good. Like, we're meant to be. Like, we're so connected. Like, how could this happen? You're so confused, so disoriented. Yeah. And like, in interest of time, I do want to get to some of you said you found some pro tips, because I do want to talk a bit about like ways in which, if you decide to stay in the relationship, that could be beneficial. And then obviously things to do, like if you decide to move on.
Yeah. This article referenced the 2015 Psychology Today Love is War article.
Okay.
And they didn't go into so many details, but they said that exposure and cognitive restructuring are the techniques used when dealing with traumatic memories, which I assume is dealing with like the flashbacks. And then really it depends on, well, one of the things, they have some links to resources, but the top priority for people who want to work through infidelity is that you need to get the two people on the same emotional page. And you said this in the beginning, that the cheater must understand the feelings of the one who is cheated on. And so getting to that place, and again, you already hit on this as well, about the retelling and talking about it, the cheating partner must hear, no matter how discomforting this is. And it's a super intense experience, and it can usually be a turning point. But that's the point where partners can soften towards each other. And that's a way for, that is a demonstration for the cheater to acknowledge and feel, like, because like you were saying throughout, you can't really know unless you've experienced it, but somehow it has to be absorbed by the cheater to have that empathy. And even though they didn't experience, feel that and soften. And that is a way to communicate to the injured partner that they really matter and that they are still important. And if somebody who's cheating is like, oh, well, there are all these reasons for, coming up with defenses.
Yes.
That's just a further, that's just like a further hammer or a nail in the coffin. So yeah, a lot of these are, again, practicing gratitude about how do you turn your relationship around? How do you rebuild trust and get things back on track with your partner? Those fully facing your feelings. They talk about when you're hurt, to be clear about your purpose. So when you're hurt, you may tend to think about the problem, but recycling the problem can escalate the pain. If you can focus on the solution that you need, you can naturally head toward your answers. And then developing a deeper level of emotional intimacy, doing things together, forming a vision of the past and the future. Now and then normalizing feelings. And yeah, all of the things. Don't ask about the details you don't need to know. So again, you've kind of already folded this in as you were describing some of the experiences that people have. Another thing, and a common current I saw, was that postpone final decisions. When you're in the midst of this emotional turmoil and dysregulation, don't make any decisions. Again, and this goes back to what you're saying of sitting and acknowledging your feelings. And it might take a long time to figure out what led to the crisis or where you need to go. But, your first impulses are probably not the wisest. So
I can't tell you how many times I have to say that. Like, I'm not telling, I don't give advice, but it may be beneficial to wait until you're feeling a little bit more stable and you're not in so much emotional distress before you make any type of permanent decision. That is like a big one right there. Just like across the board, just wait.
There's also a link, and I haven't looked at the site, so I can't speak to it myself to give a thumbs up, but survivinginfidelity.com. Are you familiar with that? That's one of the other resources.
You want to put that on Instagram later?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Like I will say this, like, you mentioned earlier about like, someone saying like, how long is it going to take me to get over this? And I will say this, like, I have individuals and couples that have come through that either have decided to stay with their partner and work things out and heal at the same time. And then others who come in as individuals who have left the relationship and, just in the midst of healing. And like I said before, like what I see when I see the most success, and I guess for, quickest healing, because again, it really doesn't matter how long it takes you to heal, as long as you heal. I just want to reiterate that, like, there really shouldn't be any time stamp on it. But for those in which I see, don't, it's not a lengthy healing process, and or they stay in the relationship and still are able to heal and the relationship be stronger than ever. It's typically like if a client has like a history of trauma, past trauma, it's so much more difficult for them to get past infidelity. Because not only, especially if it's unresolved past trauma, like not only are they trying to get past infidelity, but also like they're extremely triggered, concerning that past trauma, because it's like all that hurt comes back. The betrayal, the pain, depending on, what trauma they experienced, especially if it was a previous infidelity from someone else, it hits them so hard, and it makes it so much more difficult. Like emotional and physical resiliency. Like I've noticed that like people who have like, again, have that strong foundation. Let's say they've grown up in a home where they had a lot of support, a lot of love. Let's say, and also like continued, like currently, like they have a lot of support around them. I see them be able to, heal much quicker, and and like I said, in some cases stay in a relationship and the relationship be stronger for it. And also like people who are already in like strong marriages, strong committed relationships, like I said, with the couple who, the guy who was just like very shocked at what he did. Like, yeah, like I feel like the fact that their relationship was really strong, as far as, and when I say strong, I mean like, good communication, right? Like that's the biggest piece of a relationship, and the most important is having healthy communication, assertive communication, open communication, being able to be vulnerable with each other, having your, boundaries set, like just feeling that connection, all of that like makes up the strength of a relationship. And I think that because they had a lot of that, and they really had a strong desire to be with each other and make it work, I think that's why they've been able to move past it. I've seen that like one of the hardest times in which a couple has difficulty moving past it, or individual, is when like, well, it's twofold. One is when like they know the person that they, so like let's say it was a friend or a family member, that it makes it so much more difficult because they're running into the person. Quite often they have to see them, and that's a huge trigger. You're constantly reminded of what happened. It just makes it so much more difficult. And then also how long the infidelity was going on. Like if it was going on for like, years, it makes it a lot more difficult for you to say, okay, yeah, we'll just let bygones be bygones and keep moving forward. Like it makes it so much more difficult because the betrayal hits a lot deeper. So yeah, I mean, again, I'm not saying like that you cannot stay in a relationship, because I really hope people understand out there, and I'll put it in Instagram later. There are a lot of TED Talks out there from therapists who were like talking you through how to work on your marriage or your relationship after an infidelity. A lot of therapists are calling it the quote unquote the new monogamy, where you are learning how to maneuver through your marriage after an infidelity and what that looks like for your marriage now. And
I think it's time for you to do it, to say how to maneuver your marriage before the infidelity.
before let's try not that, and that's a whole other topic, Jen, because like I cannot tell you how many couples come in and I'm just like, man, this did not have to happen. Like if there was more communication and again, cornerstone, I keep talking about communication being the biggie. But the biggest point I just wanted to make today was just that, just understanding that you have a right to, and there's a reason why you're feeling the feelings that you're feeling, that the emotions are overwhelming, that you're feeling so much despair, so much anger, so much shame, so much disappointment, there is a reason behind it all. Like you're not, your feelings are valid. You're not just quote unquote, as some people want you to believe, crazy.
Mm-hmm.
There is a reason why you're feeling the feelings that you're feeling, and it is because you have just gone through something that is extremely traumatic.
Even if you didn't even get proof, listen to your body. If it doesn't feel right, trust yourself.
Exactly. And talk, even if you feel like your friends aren't being the most supportive, reach out to a therapist, because I'm telling you, I have plenty of clients that just come in for that. They just need to heal through, and from their infidelity, so if you need to just see a therapist for a few months to have that safe space to be able to talk about your feelings and, know that there's only support, no judgment, please seek a therapist. Do it online, do it in your area, whatever have you. Mm-hmm.
Are there psychotherapeutic groups around infidelity?
I would imagine so, but I couldn't tell you any off the top of my head, but support groups are a great idea too. Some people don't feel all that comfortable talking to a room full of people, but sometimes it is helpful to talk to other people who are, in the like actually going through what you're going through in that moment in time. That's helpful.
Especially if money is a barrier to
Yeah.
getting access
Yeah.
to safe
Yeah.
conversations.
Yeah. Very good point. So that's my spiel.
So what I gather from it is, if there is one thing to walk away from this topic, is communicate.
Mm-hmm. Across the board, whether
Find
it's in your
support where you can.
relationship. Yes. Yeah. Find support and know that, like, you're not in this alone. It may feel like you're all alone. It may feel just overwhelming. You may feel like you're drowning in your emotions, but you're not alone. Reach out. Like I said, either to a therapist, like Jen said, support group, or either make your friends listen. Like if your friends aren't being supportive, say, hey, like right now, like you're my friend, I love you, you love me. Right now, I don't feel like you're being supportive. I feel like you're judging me. I feel like you're, not validating my feelings. And I really need you to just listen, hear me, validate me, support me.
And if they can't respond to that, then they're not your friend. If you ask for help, say something just like Dee said, and then they throw shade and attitude, that is not your friend.
Real talk. No, seriously, you're absolutely right. You are absolutely right. Just know, to anyone listening that, don't try to go through it alone. Don't try to suffer. Please don't suffer in silence. Please.
Be courageous. Ask for help. It's more brave to ask for help. And so many people think that are taught that we have to shoulder burdens alone. Mm-hmm. And that is impossible to be healthy. I'm about to get on the soapbox. And I think that's going to be a theme That's going to be a theme throughout our podcast. And that's one of the motivations that Dee had to have this podcast, is that so many people are isolated. So many people don't have access to resources. Ask away, have real talk, have real conversations. No one should ever have to do it alone.
No, please don't. Please don't. And again, asking for help is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. I'm off my box. Thank you, Jen.
I think that's a perfect way to end.
Yes, it is. You guys take care out there.
Good night.
Good night.